Welcome back to the AgNet News Hour. Here's Sabrina Halvorson.
It's time for this week's Almond Update, brought to you by the Almond Board of California. You can find them online at almonds.com. For today's Almond Update, Taylor Hillman brings us two interviews.
Here with California Ag Secretary Karen Ross. Very special week here in California. Not everyone outside of California does a week, right?
I don't think so, but that's how much we love healthy soils.
We're here for Healthy Soils Week. California Almond Board putting on a little bit of a gathering today to talk about healthy soils, and the demonstration they have out here is whole orchard recycling. Let's talk big picture here.
Yeah.
Why is it important for us to highlight healthy soils as a whole here in California?
Well, I think it's easily taken for granted that so much of the world's biodiversity is literally beneath our feet. Up to 60% of the world's biodiversity is in our soils. And it is that microbial activity that's going on that allows us the kind of productivity that we have. The other cool thing about healthy soils is healthy soils and the farmers who steward the soils are part of the climate solution because we can sequester carbon. You all know that in almonds because your trees are doing that every day. And what's really neat, our theme this year for Healthy Soils Week is the circular economy through healthy soils. And this is a perfect example of taking this woody biomass when the longevity of the orchard is finished, this ability to pull it up, chip it, and reincorporate it into the soil. It's just taking that carbon that was in those trees and incorporating it into our soils. That soil organic matter is feeding that microbial activity. It's increasing the water holding capacity. It's improving the nutrient cycling, and it's adding even more biodiversity. In addition to, hopefully over time, better yields, which is really what farming is about. It's about feeding us, but we have to feed our soil too.
No, you're right. There's so many added benefits when you think about some of these practices. Making sure that we tell the consumer, the general public, about these practices, that's important. And that's not something we've done well over the last 30, 40 years. So I think the fact that we're highlighting these things, and I think that's something that Healthy Soils Week does. You know, how important is it for associations and groups to be able to highlight some of those things? That's part of telling the story, right?
Absolutely. And it can start with inviting school children out, starting at the earliest age where it's a golly gee whiz discovery kind of process. In addition to today's consumers are very interested, they're curious about, and they want to know more about not just the food, but where the food comes from and how it's being grown. And so this commitment to sustainability, climate resilience are really important messages that matter. And when you watch the demographic trend changes, younger consumers in particular are driving that, but they're not solely responsible for that kind of interest in our food, and we stand behind that food. It's easy for us as farmers to take it for granted. This is what we do. But communicating what we're doing, the transparency that people are yearning for are things that we can do on a local basis, whether it's school children or neighbors or community clubs. There's so many ways each one of us can be part of the storytelling that matters to people today.
And that's also important not only to the consumer, but hopefully for regulators to hear this message as well.
I think it's especially important for my friends in the regulatory arena. Because it's easy to have a perception of what farming is like and how quote-unquote simplistic it is, as opposed to getting out, having that opportunity to see firsthand, hear the kind of dialogue we heard today, just the farmer-to-farmer exchange of information, the questions they're asking, and the understanding that every decision that's made on a daily basis is about trade-offs. There's a level of complexity to it, and the farmers have to know a lot about a lot of things to be successful in farming, but we all benefit from them.
This is the first day of Healthy Soils Week. You've got a busy week doing some traveling up and down the state. I'm sure it's going to be fun and be able to go and talk to everybody. It's kind of nice to see a different groups doing some stuff this week.
It's a blast. And you know, the almond orchard was the basis for the early work that the Almond Board of California funded. Again, this is about growers identifying opportunities and solutions on the land. It was their research that was brought to the Department of Food and Agriculture. Our environmental farming panel said we should fund a demonstration project with this, collect 3 years of data. It's now not only one of the incentive grant opportunities for orchards, but it's also led to being incorporated into the USDA NRCS standards of practice to qualify for all of their conservation programs as well. So it takes leadership, and I really have to commend the Almond Board of California and the growers who are part of the Almond Board that have really made these kinds of transformative investments.
Karen, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for the opportunity, and happy Healthy Soils Week. Go California.
Brandon Ribeiro, grower, and also on the Almond Board Board of Directors. We're out here kicking off Healthy Soils Week at demonstration here. This is an orchard you guys have here, and you have decided to do whole orchard recycling. They had an interesting question up there, which was, you have alternatives up here in Solano County. Why did you decide to do this?
Yeah, we certainly can still burn here in Solano County, but we really chose not to because there's a lot of healthy soil attributes that can come out of incorporating these chips back into the soil. As I look out in this orchard and I see these big piles of chips, I just see free fertilizer that needs to go back into the soil as a means of nutrients. I also like the water holding capacity abilities of getting these chips back into the soil. We can generally apply 20% less water because of the increased water holding capacity that this organic matter gives us. I also like long-term yield data. I think the Almond Board has a study that's going on past 10 years now and shows that yield increases are significantly better when you incorporate the chips back into the soil versus just hauling them off like we used to.
Yeah, usually, we understand that, growers need to see a yield benefit to really adopt a practice. So I think that's critical. But as you mentioned, there's a bunch of other benefits from this practice, one of which is reducing your input costs, water. That's a big one.
Certainly it's huge, and we've really seen that from a data-driven perspective as we have soil probes that monitor root tension and soil moisture. We can certainly see that we are applying less water simply because we're getting more efficiency out of the water that gets retained in the soil profile.
And you guys were able to take advantage of some grant funding too for this, right?
Yeah, there's great programs out there. This was administered through Solano County Farm Bureau, and it really helps offset the cost burden that growers have to face when they're trying to do this project, compared to the old way where you could just burn, which is, sure, it's cheaper, but growers, we certainly could benefit from the help of the cost burden associated with this, in particular, given the low almond price and environment we're in right now.
That was Taylor Hillman from the Almond Board of California with this week's Almond Update. This is the AgNet News Hour. We'll be back in just a moment.
Welcome back to the AgNet News Hour. Here's Sabrina Halvorson.
The USDA has a new ag trade forecast for 2025. Gary Crawford has the story.
USDA is out now with its new ag trade forecast for the 2025 fiscal year.
It's kind of a continuation of some of the short-term trends we've been seeing over the last couple years.
USDA's chief economist Seth Meyers' description of the new forecast, which is projecting 2025 U.S. ag exports at $170 billion, down from this past year by just under 4.5. Seth Meyers says, of course, he's not happy about that forecast. He's not surprised by it either.
U.S. export value has been falling since 2022, but of course, part of that is because commodity prices were peaking out in 22, right? So again, here, exports falling in this situation isn't necessarily a surprise, perhaps, as commodity prices continue to moderate.
At least for most of the so-called bulk commodities such as corn, soybeans, and cotton.
We depend a lot on bulk commodity exports for the fortunes of our ag trade, and right now we're facing a lot of competition,
with many other producing countries having good harvests and ample supplies as well. But the export news for the U.S. is not all bad. Seth Meyers says while sales of most bulk commodities are struggling, exports of high-value products are expected to be on the rise, especially livestock products.
For livestock, poultry, dairy exports, they're forecast $700 million higher, and that gets us to a total of $39.3 billion. And you got increases basically across the board. Beef exports $400 million increase to $8.8 billion. And you got higher volumes are offsetting some of those lower unit values. So a little bit of easing of price more than offset by some growth in volume. And that's a good thing. You know, we do a fair amount of business, high value business in beef exports. So we get a little bit of a trim in price and have some volume increases. Again, a bit of a different fortune for livestock as exports go up $700 million in livestock, poultry, and dairy.
So those are the basic trends projected for U.S. ag exports, down from 2024. Meanwhile, U.S. ag product imports are projected up by over $9 billion,
leading to a widening of the trade deficit into fiscal year 25.
USDA projecting a trade deficit of $45.5 billion. Gary Crawford reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
President-elect Donald Trump's nominee for U.S. Trade Representative Jamison Greer signals a renewed focus on trade disputes and tariffs. Greer, a seasoned trade expert and former chief of staff to Robert Lighthizer, helped shape Trump's earlier policies, including tariffs on China and the replacement of NAFTA with the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement. Trump emphasized Greer's role in defending American manufacturing, agriculture, and services while targeting trade imbalances. The president-elect recently announced plans to impose 25% import duties on goods from Mexico, Canada, and China. In response, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum warned of possible retaliatory tariffs, stating that one tariff followed by another puts at risk common businesses. While open to dialogue, Sheinbaum emphasized that drug-related issues are primarily a U.S. problem. Retaliatory tariffs could have significant consequences for U.S. agriculture, which has been a frequent target in past trade disputes. In 2018, Mexico imposed tariffs on U.S. agricultural products during the USMCA negotiations. That's our show for today. This has been the AgNet News Hour. I'm Sabrina Halvorson. For Lorrie Boyer and myself, thank you for sharing your morning with us.
To get more information on the topics you heard today, visit AgNet West at agnetwest.com. You can also stay connected by following us on our social media at AgNet West on Facebook, Instagram, and X. Also look for Sabrina Halvorson on Facebook, and be sure to subscribe to our podcast by searching for AgNet West on your podcast app. Thank you for listening to the AgNet News Hour from AgNet West. AgNet West Radio Network, your primary choice for agriculture news.